What if the person you loved was talking to something that didn't love you back? What if they looked into the mirror and it looked back at you? I thought I knew him, his scent, his laugh, his quiet rituals before bed. But that night, something changed. It started with a whisper, soft, hushed, like silk tearing in the dark. He didn't know I was watching. He always showered at 10:15. Routine was his religion. But that night, he stopped halfway to the bathroom, stood in front of the hallway mirror, and whispered to it. Not to himself, to someone else. I heard one word, one awful, echoing word. Soon. He said it like a promise. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering. I didn't understand. He never talked to himself. And his tone, it wasn't scared. It was reverent, like he was talking to a priest or a god. He stood there for almost a minute, then smiled at his reflection. That's when I noticed his reflection wasn't smiling back. I tried to brush it off, told myself it was stress. His job had been brutal lately. Long hours, dark circles, cold dinners reheated in silence. But something inside me shifted, like a string pulling tight beneath my ribs. I didn't sleep, not really. And the next morning, he acted like nothing happened. Made my coffee exactly the way I liked it. Caramel creamer. 2 spoons of brown sugar. Just how I taught him. But he didn't drink his. He sat across from me, hands still, eyes fixed, like he was watching a screen only he could see. And then, out of nowhere, he said, "They're almost ready." I froze mid-sip. "Who?" I asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll see soon," he said, voice calm, like he was reading a bedtime story. That evening, I locked myself in the bedroom. I needed time to think, needed to breathe. I scrolled through our photos, vacations, laughs, moments that felt safe. But something started happening. In every image, his eyes didn't match. One always looked slightly off, just a fraction, like something else had been looking out through him the whole time. How had I missed it? Midnight. I heard it again. That voice. Not his, not mine. Low, wet, like leaves dragged across tile. Came from the bathroom mirror. I crept toward it, each step heavier than the last. He wasn't in there, but the lights were on, and steam clung to the glass, even though no one had showered. On the mirror, for words scrawled through the condensation. "We see you too." My hands were shaking. I ran down the hall, back into the room. But as I turned the corner, he was standing there, naked, smiling, eyes wide, like someone had peeled him open from the inside. "I told them," he whispered. "They're listening now." Whole, what happens when someone opens a door that was never meant to be opened? Whole, and what if the one you love is already gone, replaced by what came through? He wasn't cold, but I was. Something in the air shifted when he looked at me, like every molecule in the room sank. I stared into his eyes, searching for that flicker of warmth, that stupid glint he always had when he teased me about leaving dishes in the sink. But there was nothing. No tired, no love, just stillness, like glass before it breaks. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. He tilted his head, just a little too far, smiled, but it didn't move past his mouth. "You don't hear them?" His voice was soft, but in the space between the words, I heard something else breathing, like he wasn't the only one speaking. I took a step back. His eyes followed, but his body didn't move. "They said you'd be afraid at first," he murmured. "They said it's normal." The words scraped against my spine. He wasn't hiding it anymore. Not the voices, not the whispers, not the mirror. That night I didn't sleep. Couldn't. He lay beside me, still, eyes wide open in the dark, watching the ceiling like he was waiting for it to speak. At 3:12 a.m., he sat up, turned his head slowly toward the mirror across the room. I pretended to sleep. I heard him whisper, but this time, it wasn't a word. It was a sound, a soft guttural click, like teeth grinding in a rhythm that wasn't human. Then, he laughed. When I opened my eyes, he wasn't there. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the hallway. Nothing. Then I noticed the basement door was open. He never went down there. He hated spiders. Said the place smelled like rot and rust. But now it was wide open, inviting. I gripped the railing. One step, another. The wood groaned like it didn't want me to come down. Then, I heard it. Him. But not just him. Two voices. Him. And something lower. A murmur, like wind behind a locked door. And then, his voice, soft and almost reverent. She'll be ready soon. My stomach turned. I should have run. Should have left the house that second. But curiosity is a cruel thing. I inched down until my foot hit the concrete floor. The room was dark, except for one thing, a mirror. Not ours. Not one I'd seen before. This one was ancient, tall, covered in cracks, but it shimmered like water. Ripples moved across its surface, like it was breathing. He stood in front of it, completely still, and his reflection wasn't mimicking him anymore. I gasped, not loud, but enough. He turned slowly, smiled. I told them you'd come, he said. His voice was both his and not. Behind him, the reflection moved on its own, and it looked at me. Its face was almost his, but stretched, mouth too wide, eyes too long, and in place of pupils, just flickering black. I ran, didn't look back, bolted up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut, and locked it. I leaned against it, hands shaking. He didn't follow, but I heard him whisper from the other side, "You can't lock them out." The next morning, he was in the kitchen, cooking pancakes, humming, like nothing happened. I stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Eyes sunken, chest tight. He turned, apron dusted in flour. "Morning, love. You sleep okay?" I couldn't speak. He kissed my cheek. Felt cold. Smelled like dust and metal. "I had the strangest dream," he said, laughing. "There was this old mirror in our basement. My blood froze. I smashed it," he continued. "Woke up and went down, and it was gone. Weird. Huh. Was it a dream? Was he dreaming? Or had something crawled through, and was now pretending to be him?" That night, I checked the basement. The mirror was gone, but in its place was a box, wrapped in old cloth. Smelled like smoke and vinegar. Inside, a single photograph. Me, sleeping, and scrawled on the back, "Her eyes are still closed. Whole, what if love is just a disguise for something waiting to wear your skin? Whole, and what if you've already been chosen? Long before you met them? What would you do if someone showed you a photo of yourself, sleeping, that you never took? What would you do if it was placed in your home, in a box that didn't belong to either of you? Would you ask questions? Or would you burn it and pretend nothing happened?" I wanted to burn it. God, I wanted to, but I couldn't, because on the back of the photo, written in jagged ink, was something I couldn't forget. "Her eyes are still closed." I didn't tell him. Couldn't. Not after the mirror. Not after the voice. Not after that thing wearing his smile told me I'd be ready soon. Instead, I kept the photo, tucked it under the lining of my coat pocket, locked the box in my wardrobe. I told myself I was being paranoid, that trauma was playing tricks on me. But later that night, I woke to the sound of tearing. Slow, deliberate, like cloth ripping beneath fingernails. I opened my eyes. He was standing at the wardrobe, naked, breathing heavily, scratching at the door with both hands. He didn't turn to look at me, just whispered over and over, "She's not ready. She's not ready. She's not ready." I didn't sleep again. The next morning, he acted like it never happened. Cracked jokes over breakfast. Asked about my dreams. Even offered to take me out for lunch. But he didn't ask about the scratches on the wardrobe. He didn't ask why his fingernails were packed with splinters. That afternoon, I went through his things. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for proof that he still existed. The man I fell in love with. The man who used to cry during wildlife documentaries. But his drawers were empty. All his journals gone. Photos? ripped from the albums, as if whoever he was now was trying to erase the version I remembered. Except for one thing. In the back of his sock drawer, a second box, identical to the first. Same smell, same fabric, but this time, inside was a cassette tape and a note. Do not listen while alone. I know what you're thinking. I should have destroyed it, thrown it into the fire, buried it beneath concrete and forgot it ever existed. But curiosity isn't quiet. It scratches. It whispers. It pulls. That night, while he was in the shower, I pressed play. The tape hissed, crackled. Then I heard it. Breathing. Wet. Close. Then, my voice. Not me now, but younger. Panicked. Crying. Please don't make me look at it, I said. I don't want to see what's in the mirror. Please stop. And then, another voice. Male. But ancient. Detached. You already did. I yanked the tape out. Dropped it. My hands were shaking. My throat felt lined with glass. How was my voice on it? I had no memory of that moment. No memory of ever saying those words. Was it a memory? A dream? Or a warning I left for myself? And forgot? He came into the room a minute later, smiling, towel over his shoulder, like nothing had shifted. But I could feel it. Something had changed. Because when he looked at me, his eyes flickered. Not with light, not with reflection, but with movement, like something small was watching from inside. Over the next few days, things got worse. He stopped eating, stopped blinking, stared at the corners of the room as if something stood there, watching. I asked him what he was seeing. He smiled and said, "Soon you'll see it too." The next night, I found 3 more photos. All of me, one brushing my teeth, one reading in bed, one standing in the mirror. Except in that last one, my eyes weren't mine. They were solid black, like oil, like void, like something had already taken hold. And then came the voices, not just from him, not just from the mirrors, but from the walls. They whispered my name, called me in his voice, but wrong, too slow, too heavy. And in between the whispers, that same word again. Soon. Soon what? Soon who? Was I becoming like him? Was something crawling in through the cracks of my mind? Or worse, had it always been there? And now I was finally starting to remember? I tried to leave, packed a bag, grabbed my keys, but the door wouldn't open. Deadbolt twisted, chain jammed. I screamed. He appeared in the hallway, calm, barefoot, blood smeared on his hands. He looked down at me and whispered, "You're almost ready now. Whole, what if the thing pretending to love you is just preparing you to be hollowed out? Whole, and what if you were never alone to begin with? What if you couldn't trust your memories? What if the person you were had already been rewritten?" I used to know who I was. I had favorite songs, childhood scars, dreams that belonged only to me. But lately, every time I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I didn't remember becoming. Not someone new, someone unfinished. After he said it, after he whispered, "You're almost ready now," I didn't speak, didn't scream, didn't even move, because part of me believed him. The next morning, I found the kitchen destroyed, drawers emptied, knives missing, appliances pulled from the wall. But none of it looked like a break-in. It looked surgical, like something had been looking for something specific. And on the counter, resting neatly beside the sugar jar, was a tooth, human, still red at the root. I covered it with a towel, didn't ask questions. He sat in the living room, staring at the window, smiling like nothing was wrong. I needed help. I needed proof. I set up a voice recorder in our bedroom. Just audio, no mirror, no cameras. I pressed record at 1:03 a.m., left it on the nightstand, pretended to sleep. By 2:15 a.m., I knew he was awake. Breathing changed, shallow, calculated. But he didn't move. At 3:07, I heard something impossible. Another voice, not mine, not his, a whisper layered beneath the static, low and childlike. "You remember now, don't you? I stopped breathing. I remember what? The recorder kept rolling. Then his voice, clear as glass. I think she's starting to open. And the child's voice replied. Then soon, we'll show her where we kept the rest. I didn't sleep that night. Just watched him from the far corner of the room. He never blinked. Never rolled over. Just stared at the ceiling, as if something above was whispering to him from behind the drywall. The next morning, I checked the recorder. The file was gone. Deleted. Only thing left was a new audio track I didn't make. 5 seconds long. No label. I pressed play, and I heard myself scream. Not present me. Younger me. Child me. The voice of someone who had already been here before. That's when the flashbacks started. Not dreams. Not nightmares. Visions. Quick. Disjointed. Flashes of an old house. Not this one, but familiar. A basement. A mirror. A woman screaming behind glass that wouldn't shatter. And always, the word scrawled in black. Soon, I started questioning everything. How long had I really known him? What year did we meet? What town did we move from? The answers were there, but they didn't feel real. Like reading lines in a play I didn't audition for. Even his scent changed. He used to smell like cedar and sleep. Now, he smelled like mildew and rust. Like the inside of something buried too long. I checked my phone for photos, our old memories, trips, birthdays, laughs, all gone. Replaced by black squares. Hundreds of them. And every caption was the same. Don't open your eyes. That night, I tried something reckless. I followed him. Waited until he left the house at midnight. Barefoot. Pale. Like something was pulling him forward. He walked 5 blocks in silence. Down past the bakery. Through the park. Into the woods behind the old library. I stayed just far enough back. Then, he stopped. In the middle of a clearing. And others were there. 7 of them. Standing in a circle. All dressed in nightclothes. All barefoot. All smiling. Like they'd been waiting. He stepped into the center. And said something I'll never forget. She's cracked enough. We can begin now. One by one. They nodded. And then, they looked up. At the same time. Like something was above them. Watching. I looked up too. And for a second, I saw it. A shape. In the trees. Too big. Too still. Eyes that blinked like doors shutting. And then, I blacked out. I woke up on my kitchen floor. Mouth dry. Wrist bruised. The clock said 3:33 a.m. He was making tea. Acting like he'd never left. I crawled backward. Away from him. Away from the kettle. From the noise. But he just smiled and said, "You followed me, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "I didn't want you to see it this soon," he whispered. "You're not ready. Not yet. But it's close." I locked myself in the guest room. Barricaded the door. Started writing everything down. Memories. Clues. Flashbacks. So I'd know what was real. And just before sunrise, I heard a knock on the door. Soft. Slow. 3 times. I didn't open it. He didn't speak. But I heard breathing. Then, a whisper. A voice I hadn't heard before. Not his. Mine. "You saw it too, didn't you? Whole, what if you're not being haunted? But slowly remembered? Whole, and what if the thing in your life isn't a stranger, but something you once invited in? What if the things you forgot weren't accidents? What if the gaps in your memory were locked doors, and someone was finally holding the key?" I used to think forgetting was a mercy. But now, I know better, because I remember. Not everything, but enough. And it's worse than I imagined. I stayed in that room for 2 days. No sleep, no food, only water and silence. He never tried to open the door. Never knocked again. Just waited. Like he knew. Like whatever was happening to me didn't need force. It only needed time. Because inside my mind, something was waking up. It started with a smell. Salt. Like sea air. And rusted chains. And something damp. Then the flashes began again. Quicker. Sharper. More real. A house. Not this one. Older. Wooded. Near the coast. I was small, maybe 6, maybe 7. In the vision, I stood barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, holding a candle, looking up at someone I should remember, but couldn't name. They whispered to me, "Repeat it, if you want them to come." And then, I did. Let the ones in glass return. Let the hollow silence burn. I woke gasping, heart racing, hands shaking. That rhyme felt real, familiar, like a song I used to sing to fall asleep. But who taught me that? And why did the memory feel shared? Later that night, I snuck into the hallway, door unlocked, house still. He was in the living room, back turned, watching old home movies on the TV. Except they weren't ours. They were mine, from childhood, footage I'd never seen. Me, in that same wooden house, walking backward down a hallway, eyes closed, murmuring the rhyme over and over. And in the background, behind the camera, a man's voice whispering, "Soon, she'll forget again." I dropped to my knees. Something inside cracked. How did he get these tapes? Why didn't I remember them? Why was he in them? Years before we ever met? I crawled to my old journals, dug through pages, looking for any mention of childhood friends, family names, birthplace, something to anchor me. But every entry ended the same way, a sentence, scrawled in handwriting I didn't recognize. "You chose to forget." I started hearing it in my dreams again. That voice, not his, not mine, the one behind the glass. "You opened the door once. Do you remember what we asked in return?" And then, the worst part, a single image, me, as a child, standing in front of a mirror, blood dripping from my palm, smiling. I tried calling my sister. No answer. Her voicemail didn't sound like her voice anymore, just static. Then, a whisper. "She remembers too." I tore the house apart, pulled furniture from the walls, looked under the floorboards, and beneath the living room rug. I found it. A trapdoor. Old. Splintered. Locked with 3 iron latches. I don't remember ever seeing it, ever living in a house that had one. But the closer I got, the louder I heard them. Voices. Dozens. Muffled. Urgent. Crying. Begging. Whispering my name, like I had left them down there. I opened the first latch. The metal was ice cold. Frost formed on my fingers. Then the second. The air changed, got heavier, like the gravity around me doubled. And just before I could open the third, he grabbed my wrist. "You're not ready," he said softly, like he was sad. "You'll remember too much." I screamed, pushed him away, ran upstairs, locked the bathroom, threw up in the sink. My reflection stared back at me, but I didn't blink. It did, before I did. I'm not sure how long I stayed in that bathroom. Time is a fog now, reality a door that keeps swinging. But one thing was clear, this wasn't about him anymore. It never was. It was about me. He wasn't my captor. He wasn't the curse. He was the caretaker, the one assigned to keep me from remembering what I let in. Because deep inside, buried beneath layers of lies and lullabies, I remembered the pact. The night I stood in that old house, candlelight flickering, blood in my hand, and the whisper from the mirror said, "You'll forget, but we won't." I traded something holy, something mine, and now they've come to collect. I looked out the window that night. He stood in the yard, staring up at me. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He just whispered, "You remember now, and that means they're coming." Whole, what if forgetting wasn't a blessing, but a delay? Whole, and what if your memories weren't lost, just waiting to be found? What if the thing clawing at your sanity was something you invited in? What if the voice calling from the dark wasn't a stranger, but a promise you made long ago? That night, I stopped running, because you can't run from what's inside you. You can only open the door. I stood above the trapdoor again, barefoot, breath shallow, all 3 latches unfastened. The final hinge groaned under my hand. The air, it wasn't just cold, pulled, like the stairwell beneath was breathing, and it had been waiting to inhale me for years. He wasn't home. Or maybe he was watching, waiting, letting me remember at my own pace. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about him. Not anymore. I opened the door, and everything changed. The walls moaned, a long, low creak that vibrated through my ribs. The floorboards beneath me pulsed like a heartbeat. And the stairwell, it didn't descend into a basement. It went back. I stepped down slowly. Each step groaned like it remembered my weight. The deeper I went, the younger I felt. Not in body, but in mind. Fragments started rising. Half memories, cracked images. The girl I used to be, the one who made a promise. To things in the dark. In exchange for something she didn't understand. At the bottom of the stairs, a hallway, narrow, dripping, with panels warped and pulsing like old skin. And on the walls, photos of me, from every year of my life, every stage, every hairstyle, every scar. Moments I never remembered living, but they had watched. At the end of the hallway, a mirror, but not glass. It rippled, like liquid, ink suspended in oil, and as I stepped closer, the surface cleared, and I saw her, me, as a child, standing barefoot on the other side, palms bleeding, eyes empty, and behind her, them, not monsters, not demons, not ghosts, but shadows, wearing my memories like costumes, mouths stitched shut, but smiling with their eyes. And then the reflection spoke. I kept the door closed for you, the child version of me said. You asked me to, but the time's up. I shook my head, backed away. No, I never wanted this. I didn't know what I was doing. You did. Her voice cracked. You gave up a piece of yourself. To forget what they showed you. Tears burned down my face. What had I seen? What had I offered in return? I turned to run, but the hallway was gone. Behind me, only darkness. And from that darkness, a single hand reached out. Human, thin, familiar. My partner, smiling softly, but his eyes weren't glowing anymore. They were wet with grief. You can't go back now, he said. You remembered. And remembering opens the door. The floor cracked beneath me. The mirror began to bleed. Thick black fluid, oozing down its surface, like ink from a throat wound. Inside, the child version of me smiled, then turned around, and walked into the dark. The whisper came from everywhere at once. Finish what you started. I woke on the kitchen floor, again, mouth full of salt, palms cut. The latches beside me, locked again, but I hadn't touched them. He sat at the table, still, eyes bloodshot, voice flat. You touched the memory. Now they'll come in dreams again, until the rest opens. What do they want? I whispered. He didn't answer. He just cried. That night, I did dream of the house, the circle, the candlelight, and all of us, the chosen ones. Children dressed in black, chanting into the mirror, as something on the other side scraped its claws along the glass, and whispered, promise us a home, and we'll give you peace. I said yes. I said yes. And in that moment, the memory returned in full. I was 6, alone, cold. My parents were gone, or maybe taken. I wandered into the coastal woods near the house, and I found the mirror, just standing there, covered in moss, cracked, whispering my name. They promised warmth, company, power, and in return, I only had to let them in. Once I remembered, I gasped awake, sweat dripping, lungs burning, and in the corner of the room, the mirror from my dream stood upright, waiting. He walked in, voice shaking. You let them mark you when you were a child. You thought you'd buried it, but the remembering activated the pact. What happens now? I asked, trembling. He closed his eyes. You finish it. Whole, what if the haunting isn't chasing you, but fulfilling your request? Whole, and what if the monsters in the dark were only waiting for your permission? What if you found out that every shadow in your life was your own? What if the monsters you feared were simply echoes of a promise you made. Before you even understood what promises meant, I didn't want to remember, but the truth never asks for permission, only attention. And now, I see everything. That morning, the mirror stood in the living room, the one from my dreams, cracked, bleeding light through its center. It hadn't always been here, but I didn't scream, I didn't run, because part of me, the deepest part, was calm, because it recognized it. The smell of salt, the silence that felt like breath, the faint echo of a voice I hadn't heard since childhood. You promised. He stood near it, my partner, no longer smiling, no longer pretending. Tears welled in his eyes. He looked exhausted, grief on his face, like a man mourning something he hadn't buried yet. It's time, he whispered. I nodded, slowly, and walked forward. The mirror pulled at me, not physically, but inside, like my bones remembered it, like my blood had been waiting for this moment. For decades. You were the first to speak to them, he said softly. In that old house by the water. You opened the door when no one else would. I was a child, I replied, voice cracking. They lied to me. He shook his head. No, they never lied. You asked for peace. They gave you silence. You asked for warmth. They became your shadow. You asked for love. His voice caught. And I was given to you. The weight hit me like a flood. He wasn't the monster. He was the consequence. He had always been there. Assigned. Bound. Not by force, but by contract. A guardian. A guide. A witness. And I remembered. He was there in the mirror when I first touched it. As a boy. Eyes soft. Reaching toward me. Before the shadows claimed him too. I didn't know it would be forever. I whispered. It's not, he said. But it's always long enough. The glass shimmered. The cracks pulsed. And then, it spoke. Not in sound. Not in words. But in feeling. Come home. I stepped forward. The surface rippled. Not like water. Like flesh. Warm. Alive. I saw flashes inside it. The circle of children. Older now. Faces scarred from forgetting. Voices broken from silence. I saw the woods. The ritual. The moment my blood touched the glass. And then, I saw myself. Alone. A little girl. Staring into the mirror. Saying goodbye to her own reflection. Before something else blinked back. They had waited. Patiently. Lovingly even. Like caretakers waiting for their favorite child to wake from a long, long sleep. And now, I was awake. But just before I could step through, he grabbed my hand. No, he said. You don't have to finish it that way. I stared at him. There's another way? He nodded, trembling. You opened the door once. But you can choose to close it. You can break the chain. But they won't go quietly. Behind him, the mirror cracked deeper. A hand burst through. Dark. Shadowed. But familiar. My hand. As a child. It reached for me. Fingers trembling. Remember why you called us? The voice said from behind the glass. Your parents were gone. You were alone. We came when no one else would. And that was the truth, wasn't it? No one came for me. Not my family. Not the neighbors. Not the world. They did. They comforted me when the world forgot me. And in return, I gave them my voice. My blood. My future. Tears poured down my face. I looked at the child hand through the glass. Then back at him. My partner. My protector. My punishment. And my only link to what was still human in me. I'm tired. I whispered. I know, he said. So let's end it. I turned toward the mirror. The reflection flickered. Shifted. The girl frowned. The others inside. The ones I made room for. Watched silently. And I spoke one final sentence. Words I never knew I remembered. The promise is broken. The mirror screamed. Not with sound, but with memory. It shook the house. Shattered the windows. Ripped the air apart. And then, cracked completely. A light burst from the center. Not warm. Not cold. Just true. And the faces behind the glass turned away. One by one, they dissolved. The child version of me looked back once, tears in her eyes, and mouthed, "Thank you." Then, the mirror exploded into dust, collapsed. When I woke, he was gone. The house was silent, the photos gone, the recordings erased, the shadows no longer watching, just me, alone, but not empty, because now, I remembered everything, and that's what made me free. I buried the shards in the woods. No markings, no ceremony, just earth, and silence, and a single thought pulsing through me. They're gone. But then, as I turned to leave, the wind shifted, and I heard a whisper. She closed the door, but not the house. Hole, do you think this was a ghost? Or something worse? Hole, did she escape? Or just wake up inside another layer of the pact? Comment below. And if you want more true horror stories like this, subscribe to the Veil of Secret.